turn back to Mr. Breedlove. We got some cool stuff to talk about, and this is probably going to be a multi-part TARTLE TCast, but it's bound to happen. So
yeah, we love his articles. On agreement on a lot of things that he shares and talks about. He's very philosophical, especially when it comes to the free market, and that's what we want to talk about today. He has an article he came out with called "Righting the Ship." Righting the ship. And he starts off this way: the way of decentralization is the free market. That's how he starts.
So the way of decentralization is the free market. Is that what he's saying?
Yes. And then he says a form of free experimentation where problem solvers make wagers to try their hands at resolving entropy for society.
Okay. So if we in the United States put certain laws, rules, and regulations in place that punish individuals from taking risks, from being creative, from trying to make new solutions or engineer new solutions, this is going to hurt the free market aspect, this generation of new ideas and wealth that occurs through this. Is that making sense?
Yes, 100%.
So when Breedlove talks about this, we have to remove any sort of resistance for the creation, essentially, of new assets, new solutions with wealth can then generate from. We feeling that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, great. What else is he talking about?
So he says entrepreneurial entropy resolution comes in the forms of want satisfaction and innovation.
Right. So every entrepreneur has an idea of where they want to go. And there's a little bit of chaos around these things. This entropy is sort of a chaotic motion. So within this, how do they refine that chaos into something very targeted? They have an idea of what they want to become in their lives. They have an idea of what they want to engineer. But we cannot limit them in their ability to engineer new things, to take this entropy and put it into something useful for all of us in society to actually find value from.
Yeah, and he says true entrepreneurs are those who play with fire and learn from their mistakes, growing the civilizational treasury of knowledge in the process.
Yeah, because entrepreneurs, they're tinkerers. And through tinkering, we've found that the probability of great things actually come when people take the time to work.
Right.
You'll burn your hand, learn a lesson, try again.
Yeah.
And these entrepreneurs, right, if they don't get burnt by their government,
right,
they'll do this all day long until they find great solutions for us.
Did you read this?
No.
Listen to this. Next line.
Did I read it? No.
Entrepreneurs are tinkerers.
Get the hell out of here.
Yes. Pursuing positive payoff convexities while hoping not to get burned, yet contributing to the enlightenment of us all when they do occasionally go up in flames.
That's what I was just talking about.
Yeah.
So here's what happens. Say an entrepreneur makes a mistake. That allows society and other entrepreneurs to recognize where things didn't work well. So that essentially that knowledge base of all of us as individuals who are in this market, in this free market, one that's reduced friction, one that affords us the opportunity to create and learn and do this testing. There's great gains that happen from it. And through the losses, we learn even more. It always pushes us forward in our own evolution.
Yeah, and this is he explains tinkering, and I really like this. He says tinkering is anti-fragile action that transmutes randomness into revelations.
Well, that's correct. So when I'm tinkering, what do? I'm taking random effects that are happening everywhere.
Right.
I'm trying random things to find something to work. It's like, how many times can I walk out into the forest and find like the perfect flower? I have to tinker. I have to slowly change my path. I have to change the time of day at which I go out there.
Yes.
Right? When is the sun going to hit? Is it going to be in bloom? It's that tinkering. It's that acting over and over and over and over through the randomness of everything occurring in this forest, in this total ecosystem. And I funneled through the entropy and found that just small changes had led me towards a solution.
Well, I mean, that's why bees are so adaptive. They do the same exact thing to find the pollen so quickly, and they adapt to these environmental changes extremely quickly.
Well, they have to.
Yeah.
Right?
For
But
survival.
no other outside force is actually limiting their ability to do that.
Right.
Unless we're spraying, pesticides out there killing the bees. That creates a friction in their ability to create and actually learn from themselves. And all they're going to know is that some sort of artificial input, a government or some other thing, is actually inhibiting them from being creative.
The pesticides destroy the free market.
That's precisely correct.
And so government regulation
Pesticide.
is pesticide.
There we go.
That makes sense. So he's quoting from the book, which we all love, Anti-Fragile. And he says this, and I love this quote: wind extinguishes a candle and energizes fire. Likewise with randomness, uncertainty, and chaos, you want to use them, not hide from them. You want to be the fire and wish for the wind.
Yeah. So if there's just a little bit of flame, if it's not afforded proper fuel, it's going to get blown out by other catalysts. So what happens is, if I take all the entropy, the chaos, essentially the twigs on the forest floor, and I'm bringing all that brush together, that brush can move into a mighty blaze, and then any other catalyst from the outside will come in and just fuel this thing. But I've afforded myself to take all the assets of the chaos, coalesce them together, and take that small little flame and turn it into a blaze.
Yeah, he says, deeply rooted in the chaos of nature. This is Breedlove. Deeply rooted in the chaos of nature through the principles of mathematics, thermodynamics, and Darwinian self-preservation. And I would argue, he's arguing for Bitcoin.
Okay.
He's a Bitcoin maximist. I would argue that anywhere we see the free market is free market. So, I'm going to say Bitcoin is what he's saying. I'm going to say the TARTLE marketplace.
Yeah.
He says Bitcoin, or the TARTLE marketplace, is the greatest expression of order ever achieved by humanity.
It's not the greatest. It's a strong expression.
Right.
But it still lacks perfection in the fact that if he's talking about a blaze,
right,
it still requires, in terms of brush, a lot of front-loaded capital to be a part of that decentralization.
Yeah, and what he's getting into is like Bitcoin is hope, in the sense of why saving and honest money is the only way to restore hope for a fallen world. So, when you're looking at money, exchange of energy, we talked about a lot of his stuff before. He's looking at Bitcoin as being kind of the only, right now, I mean, there's going to be a lot of cryptocurrencies that come out, but being the only one that's honest money.
How is he saying that it's honest? Honest in the fact that it removes, very centralized parties from coming in and manipulating it? Is that his sense of honesty?
Yeah, he says, my hope is that Bitcoin will help entrepreneurs regain their economic anti-fragility by giving them the ability to store savings in a plunder-proof money and discouraging undue debt accumulation.
Got it. So his idea is that through the use of decentralized cryptocurrency networks, specifically Bitcoin,
yes,
one of the largest aspects of failure in entrepreneurialism, allowing businesses to thrive, is a lack of cash flow. So he's saying if you change the store of value outside of debt and move it into something that's appreciating very quickly,
yes,
through collective social value of a decentralized network, that actually stabilizes your business going forward. You have the ability to operate at a very, very low cost by integrating this not only into your store of value, but also as the fabric of which your business is operating in this new web paradigm.
Where we would look at it in the sense of money, but we would look at it with the TARTLE marketplace, we look at it in the sense of trade. Yeah. Like, for instance, if a not-for-profit think tank has a scientist that works for it and they want to sell their white papers or sell their research, they could go to the TARTLE marketplace, put that on the marketplace, and then if a large corporation or an organization would want to purchase that on this free market, they have the ability to do that. And then that money goes to that organization to support that organization.
Correct. So instead of begging for grants, which everyone's fighting for, appropriate your work that you've put out there and get paid for doing that work, as you should. And then put that towards the things you actually need. And
I agree with this, and I know you will too. He says maximally sovereign, problem-solving entrepreneurs, fortified by sound savings, are our best fighting force against eternal entropy.
Yeah, so, how do you simplify this? The idea is that the foundations which entrepreneurs need to create something of value, amongst all the chaos and change that is going on here, is to have sufficient fundamentals. First of all, that's the currency which they receive, right, to support their business. And then from that, use the technology which supports that currency to support how their business operates. Now, from that, it creates a robust system because it's inherently decentralized, which is what he's getting at. And through that decentralization, you have sovereignty over the action, creation, and what you do in terms of your creativity within that business. Now, for instance, if I want to get into banking today, Jason, I'm limited by huge amounts of money I have to pay up front just to get the operation going, to get the licensing from the state and federally. Now, if I wanted to create a new sort of financial service or within banking, a DeFi thing, I can do that right now.
Yes.
Under my own creativity.
Yes.
So all the chaos and uncertainty and debt that happens around these other systems that are so front-loaded, I can shift that over towards something like this, where now my work has a very direct payoff.
Yeah, and I love this part. He talks about entrepreneurs. He said, let us honor them as true heroes and disavow the heinous bureaucrats undercutting their achievements through unnecessary legislation and inflation. Let liberty not legislatures lead us.
Right. You got to let freedom and creativity lead, not law to lead.
Right.
Law is a very reactive approach to human choice.
Yeah, and he says a leaderless civilization is for the first time possible with Bitcoin. And I would say Bitcoin is one of those.
It's one.
But Tartle Marketplace, you could have a leaderless civilization with that.
Easily you could do all your voting and everything could happen directly through Tartle.
Right.
Through everyone's work, interaction, and sharing of that data.
Well, what he's really, really big on, hugely big on, which he would love Tartle for this instance, and I encourage him to, let's have a conversation, is private property rights.
Oh my gosh, we're one of the biggest champions.
This perfects private property rights. Tartle's Marketplace, and I know he would say Bitcoin does too, but Tartle Marketplace, and you could see a lot of similarities back and forth. The Tartle Marketplace perfects private property rights.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Bitcoin does that because the Bitcoin value can still be manipulated. So someone's right is still associated with a US dollar value.
Yeah.
Where with Tartle, your work is secured with this tool to say that this is my property. So the thing you've actually worked for, rather than people just buying into it to say, I'm securing all these property rights, which can be manipulated in its value, you have 100% right just through your own work and choice of access to this tool, which is Tartle.
Yeah, and I want you to talk about this because this is really cool. He said perfected private property rights are a prerequisite to the proper placement of freedom, growth, and responsibility in our social hierarchy of values.
Yeah, that's correct. No one's going to do anything if they feel like they can't own it and they can't say that this thing is mine. Because in a grand sense, it's very difficult for people to just be openly altruistic and just throw their resources out to everybody. Unless everybody was doing that, then we wouldn't have to worry about property rights. Because we all understand the unification, what's going on, but that lacks right now. So we're required to have this property right of our work.
And property is not real estate. Let's get we had a whole episode on this where we talked about property
rights, data,
your data,
thought, your choices, all the
everything.
shit that's going on.
Whatever you create in your own free will,
right?
That is your property.
That's correct.
He said there are no finite answers to the world's unlimited problems. Our only hope is to empower more and more problem solvers. Entrepreneurship is pragmatic to problems, and therefore our greatest hope.
Yeah, and that's true. And this is what what's that gentleman who's speaking in Texas to the Senate?
Ted Cruz.
That's what we're apolitical, but Ted Cruz was saying is like if you put limitations on what's happening around the fabric of blockchain technologies, you are going to cripple our future. And he said, because you don't want to take the time to understand it and only hear what the media tells you and try and slide this stuff in, that regulation will cripple your future and the people that will vote for you within your future.
Yeah.
So you have to afford that freedom. You have to afford that sovereignty. You have to afford, you don't go into the forest, right? And then put a cement wall around it and say, oh, it's going to grow so well. You've already created a natural upper limit to what the forest can be creative with it defining and evolving itself to all the catalysts that affect that forest.
Yeah, look at Australia, New Zealand, and Hawaii when they try to when we introduce these species that are not.
Yeah, it destroys it.
Yes.
Right? So when you artificially come in and then try and...
With the concrete walls, with the whatever it might be, you are actually destroying the natural freedom that is required for this thing to actually become something great. Yeah, and so I want people to understand the power of Tartle. And so, like I said, he talks about Bitcoin, but we could replace the word Bitcoin with Tartle. Bitcoin suffers no kings. A money uniquely characterized by a firmly fixed finitude of supply. Bitcoin is capable of communicating an infinity of economic and interpersonal values without being politicized, thereby bringing unprecedented harmony to human actions across space-time.
Yeah, in the sense of our material world across space-time, Breedlove is discussing the fact that, Bitcoin in and of itself has, there's 21 million of them, right? Which is divisible around to a certain amount of Satoshis.
Right.
You can't just continue to print more. So from its progenesis, it has a set amount of this thing. But one of the greatest issues we have found with it is that it has been associated to the US dollar. Is that clear? So now...
No, I've seen charts where they took the US dollar and then they put Bitcoin with it.
The problem is Bitcoin was fundamentally designed to say, let's look to a better system. But then people got caught up with saying, well, it's only worth this when we attach its value in exchange to the US dollar, not what it means as a technology, what it means as a sovereign empowerment tool,
yes.
which has now been left. And so what you find is individuals like Breedlove and other champions are pushing the sovereign tool, but the rest of society, the ones who have resources, have now inextricably linked its value to the US dollar. And that's a problem. And that's why it won't continue to exist in the future for what it was originally intended. The only thing that can make that happen is work, and that happens on the TARTLE marketplace because everybody has the ability to be responsible and do work to create an earning and a value for their future. But not everybody has infinite sums of money to then buy into a Bitcoin system.
Yeah, he says in Bitcoin only our ideas matter, not our egos. What I would say in TARTLE's marketplace, only our work matters, not our egos.
That's correct. Only your work matters, what you put in, what you're willing to share. Your work towards truth is what drives that value, not only for you, but for everyone that interacts with you as a member, as a human being on that marketplace.
Yeah, and he says a money composed by principles of pure justice pushes us all to become more competent by facilitating an equitable arena for economic competition and cooperation. And that's what the TARTLE marketplace does. It's a principle of pure justice, economic competition and cooperation. That's what a free market does.
Well, yeah, justice is it's the quality of being fair. It has to be designed for fairness. But now the value of Bitcoin and people wanting to be a part of it is becoming unfair. So now all these companies are coming out trying to create new ways for people to get, micro amounts of Bitcoin for free. So what happens is some other larger resource holder has to buy it and then find a new way to divvy it up.
Yes.
It's like who can come in and now create more fractions of the piece of the pie because it has naturally crippled itself by linking its value to the US dollar.
Well, what's going to happen if Bitcoin gets fully adopted? It's going to be owned by the 1%.
Always.
And then it will be, and then like you said, DeFi applications we built like Lightning. You have with Twitter now, you can send Bitcoin back and forth.
Why? Because the individuals who own the greater majority of it can now dish it back out.
Yes.
It's just new forms of central banks. Oh, good. Thanks for creating a new tool, but you still had to buy in with US dollar.
Yeah. And so I own this. I own one Bitcoin and it's $500 million. One Bitcoin is now. Let's pretend like we're in the future. And so I have this capital. I have $500 million to be able to divvy it. So now I can, they already have it where you can pull interest off of these. You have blockchains where
they linked it right back into the old order.
Yeah.
So what, Jason, the greatest part of it, which was my hope when it had originally come out, is that if I go to buy a cup of coffee, I am not charged on what individuals think or what the corrupt current market, financial markets think that value of the cup of coffee as a commodity. That individual would charge me for that cup of coffee in Bitcoin depending on what they see the value of that Bitcoin is. Not to say that it costs this much to produce it. And the difficulty is the energy that goes into the production of material items. That is still linked to the US dollar system. So Bitcoin, as long as it continues to be used for these purchases of things that are manufactured and the energy actually comes in a US dollar system, it's inextricably linked to it. And that's going to be its failure in the future. The technology is great. The fundamentals, the philosophy has that perfection to it.
Right.
Free will, sovereignty, free markets. But society is now linking it back to the thing that is the old broken.
Yeah, and it will happen because the whales will come in as they are starting to. Once the regulation hits, we've talked about this before, and these hedge fund managers get a clear, if you're getting 113% return every year, which Bitcoin has done, then of course you're going to want to be a part of that. But I need to de-risk this, because I'm, I have a potential of.
Well, they have more resources now, so they can jump in much faster than you did, even later in the game.
Yes.
Their adoption rate is much easier for them. There's less friction. You have a higher friction.
Yeah, and so without getting into Bitcoin, because I want to compare this to TARTLE Marketplace, that was kind of the whole idea of this. Last thing I want to get into for this episode is, he says, Bitcoin imparts a renewed hope for humanity as we navigate even deeper into the impenetrable horizons of the future. Removing the attack surface for would-be plunderers of money is a great leap forward for the potential proliferation and moralization of civilization. So let's step away out of Bitcoin and get into the TARTLE Marketplace. When we look at these attack surfaces of would-be plunderers of money, or pirates, let's say, remember back in the day, they would go in the Caribbean, and they had like the pirates had little systems set up.
You bet they did.
And they knew they could take this ship from the Spain and then steal this gold. And then they started eating themselves up.
Yeah. Cause now they're fighting over it.
Yeah.
So here's the idea. larger tech monopolies had a plunder or a piracy on individuals' data, essentially their rights to this asset that they have worked to generate.
Yes.
We have developed a tool that doesn't cost money to use. A tool that says put in a little bit of work, your own work under your own responsibility, and take back that away from the plunderers. Then forcing a higher moral code between both parties. I'm responsible for what I create, and those who wish to take it from me must pay me for that. And I must be willing to share, rather than to say, I can just pay in and take as much as I want because I have more resources. I have a bigger ship. I have a bigger cannon. That's no longer the thing. We've removed that. That element it no longer exists when you come on to join TARTLE. The fundamentals create that higher moral code. The ethics then change within that market. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, 100%.
Great.
And this is where I really want, especially buyers of data, to understand. Whenever you're coming in to purchase data,
yes,
whether you're a whale, if you want to use that terminology or whatever, or whether you're a small business located in Anchorage, Alaska,
yes,
and you want to know about hunters that are coming in and whatever it may be, environmental issues, whatever it is, you have the ability to have the power of TARTLE's marketplace to you, regardless if you're a small guide service in Alaska or you're the biggest whale in the world.
Precisely correct. There is no caste system or social hierarchy that you could play as your card to get ahead, as a bigger resource holder. Everybody has equal access and rights to it.
You can purchase more. You can purchase more data if you have more money, but that's the free marketplace.
Yeah, go ahead. Listen, purchase more. All you're doing is then reinforcing a higher moral code the more money you spend in.
And then that's what friends and family are going to know that this person, and then if they can willfully choose to sell that data to that corporation or not. It just grows. It grows and grows, and then helps humanity more and more and more.
That's all it is. So you are actually feeding into a system which helps humans evolve, which helps us move forward into the darkness of our future.
So if you're a buyer of data and you want to know more, what's the best way to get a hold of us?
You need to email mh@tartle.co. M is in Mary, H is in Harry, at tartle.co.
And by emailing that, there's questions. We can set up APIs with you.
Let's establish a relationship.
There's a lot of different scenarios that you would be shocked in the way that you could purchase the data and how flexible the marketplace is.
And how much value you can receive as a business.
And ethically, that's the key.
De-risk your business. Hello? Don't we all want to do that? Listen, enough said. Breed love. Thank you. See you later.